Greetings and welcome back to Pseudo's journey through the Japanese air tech tree in War Thunder, a series of subpar guides made for unskilled free-to-play players by an unskilled free-to-play player. Well, on this magnificent day, we shall be going over the final aircraft in Rank 1 of the Japanese air tech tree, the famed and feared Ki-43-1 and 2. The Ki-43-1 and 2 are fighters which can be found folded together at BR 2.7 in Rank 1 in the second line of the Japanese air tech tree. As the Ki-43s are folded together, the video will be divided up into 4 sections. Firstly, we'll look at the general characteristics which are common to both planes. Then we shall have a section for each which highlights their unique differences, and finally we shall have our typical modifications and wrap-up section. The Ki-43s are the final fighters in Rank 1 of the Japanese air tech tree, and they do the term fighter justice. These two fighters have quite good weaponry and simply sublime flight performance. To begin with, let's talk about that flight performance that gives these planes nearly unmatched dogfighting capability at this rank. The turn rate of the Ki-43s is excellent. Perhaps it's not as good as something like the A5M4, but very, very few fighters will be able to match you in a horizontal turn. A reminder that you do much better in a horizontal turn than a vertical one, as you bleed massive amounts of speed in a vertical maneuver. Be wary of this, and do try to stick mostly to horizontal maneuvers if you want to keep your energy. The roll rate of the Ki-43 is simply the best in class. You would be hard-pressed to find a single plane in Rank 1 with a superior roll performance. It snaps into rolls and allows you to change directions incredibly quickly. Between these two flight performance metrics, you're already almost untouchable if you know what you're doing. The rudder is also good, especially on the 1, though nothing truly spectacular. It shouldn't cause you too many problems getting guns on target. Overall, the dogfighting performance just feels magical. Another one of the best traits of the Ki-43s is their climb rate. Even without an airspawn, you can easily climb up well above bombers. The only things that you have to worry about matching you are P-38s and MiG-3s. Besides those planes, not too many other planes without an airspawn can climb up that high so quickly. You can go into a 20-degree climb straight off the runway and be able to climb up to 3 kilometers above the ground within 2 minutes. This means that you have an incredible energy advantage on most people. This is also aided by the fact that you have nearly no control lockup in a dive, all the way until about the 630 km/h mark at which your wings head out, meaning that you can dive on anyone without worry. There are some notable downsides to the Ki-43s. Neither of them have great engines, especially the Ki-43-1, which never allows you to go much faster than a medium pace outside of a dive. This means that anyone and everyone can and will run you down or run away from you. Not only that, but you don't dive incredibly quickly, meaning that if they have enough altitude, they can dive away and there's nothing you can do to stop them. If people start running away from you, let them go. It's just a waste of time and energy to follow them. These two Ki-43s also have very different characteristics at high and low altitudes, but we'll leave that for the individual sections for each of these planes. Being Japanese planes, their durability is also pitiful. Nearly any shots to them will cause major damage or fires, and there's little chance for recovery once you get hit. So, make sure that you never get hit. Watch out for tail gunners on enemy planes, as even strike fighters with low caliber tail guns can be a death sentence for you. I've also noticed that while the engines heat up to high temperatures very quickly, they rarely have issues with overheating, thankfully, so you won't need to worry too much about that being an issue, but it's good to keep an eye on. The mechanization of the Ki-43s is fairly simple. Both have combat, takeoff, and landing flaps which rip at round about 250 km/h. The gears rip at about 300 km/h. The combat flaps are very useful in dogfights, allowing you even better turn performance if you need it against things like Spitfires, but they do drain your energy quicker, so it's probably best not to have them out for an entire dogfight. Use them wisely, and they'll help you out that much more. The takeoff flaps are really quite useless, as you can take off after only a few seconds of acceleration anyway. Landing flaps are nice, as they allow you control at incredibly low speeds, down to less than 150 km/h. And they're also nice for slowing down on the airfield, as the brakes on the Ki-43s are pitiful. The playstyles of both of these Ki-43s are very similar and fun. You climb up high at the start of a match using your incredible turn performance. Then you slowly work your way down through enemies from the higher altitude ones at first to the lower level ones. Your key tactic is to drop down from on top of enemies and hope that they're dumb enough to dogfight you. Once you get them in that position, it's all up to your skill as a pilot to take them down. Remember that you bleed energy much more in a vertical maneuver, so feel free to do some quick vertical maneuvers if they're trying to force an overshoot as you come out of your dive. Incorporate the knowledge about the specific Ki-43 that you're using, as we'll talk about in the sections later, to stay safe. Remember to keep an eye on your energy at all times as well, as that will be a very important factor for the Ki-43-1 especially, and also the Ki-43-2 at higher altitudes. Alright, now that we're done with the general characteristics exhibited by both Ki-43s, let's dive into their unique qualities, starting off with the first one in the folder, the Ki-43-1. The Ki-43-1 and 2 have a few major differences that affect their playstyles to certain degrees, but their major ones are their weight, engines, and armaments. The Ki-43-1 has a bit lower weight than the 2, but has a noticeably worse engine. As noted before, the maximum speed of the Ki-43-1 in particular is fairly bad, especially at lower altitudes due to that weak engine. Not only that, but the acceleration is just sad, taking a long time to speed up to only 400 km per hour in level flight on the deck with full WEP. Needless to say, you really have to hope that enemies don't try to run away, as that is pretty much a hard counter to you. Make sure to drop down on people and surprise them with your altitude advantage so they don't have that chance. Overall, due to the lighter airframe, you have better turn performance and agility out of the two Ki-43s and can pull some incredible maneuvers unlike anything else you've played so far. However, the engine is, once again, a bit detrimental here, as you can't keep your energy up well after a few turns, so you have to be a bit more careful with the Ki-43-1 to deal with enemies quickly before all of your energy is gone, as you'll take a long time to recover it. This actually leads into one of the other most important differences between the Ki-43's flight performances, which is how they differ at different altitudes. The Ki-43s are most definitely suited towards lower altitudes. Their turn times and energy retention is better at lower altitudes, and they have all-around noticeably better characteristics. However, the Ki-43-1 yet again has engine issues here. At lower altitudes, once that speed is gone, the Ki-43s become a little bit more unmaneuverable than you might expect. They definitely don't become boats by any means, but it becomes a lot more fair of a fight for your enemies, which is something that you never want. As such, you really have to mind your energy and be quick about dealing with enemies before you enter into long and protracted turn fights at lower altitudes. At higher altitudes, the Ki-43s burn energy much quicker and have less continuous turn performance. However, above about the 3 kilometer mark, the Ki-43-1 actually starts having some really decent low-speed performance. Once you bleed all your energy, you might not exactly gain super maneuverability, but you definitely get whatever the early World War II equivalent is. You don't turn as much in the conventional sense, but with combat flaps out, you can kind of simply aim your nose where you want to go and it just does. It is a strange feature of this plane which makes it very fun to play at high altitudes. You have no speed or continuous turn capabilities after a turn or two, but the enemy just can't seem to escape your nose either. Do note that as you have no speed, you'll be an easy target for third parties and easy to run away from as well. In summation, the energy retention isn't great and you need to be a bit more efficient at dealing with enemies at lower altitude while you still have a massive edge in turning capabilities. At higher altitudes, you'll drain all of your energy, but if you pop combat flaps, your ability to point your nose where you want is impressive for such low speeds, allowing you to make most any dogfight against other low altitude fighters into a joke. In terms of forward armaments, the Ki-43-1 sports several different gun configurations which you can unlock with more upgrades. You can have 2 7.7 Type 89 machine guns, or one 7.7mm Type 89 machine gun and one 12.7mm Hole 103 machine gun, or two 12.7mm Hole 103 machine guns. As you are well aware by now, the Type 89 machine guns are atrocious and should be avoided at nearly any costs. Their damage is pitiful, and at battle rating 2.7 it will take a miracle to shoot anything down with them. They have several ammo belts, but all of them exhibit very low damage. The 12.7mm Hole 103s are actually decent, however. They have a slightly lower fire rate than the 7.7mm guns, but their damage is noticeably better. They typically won't 1 or 2 shot enemies, but unlike the 7.7mm guns, you'll likely only need a single-digit number of hits to kill most enemies. Individual shots can even get critical hits on enemies. They have several belts, with their air targets belt being a clear winner for the increased number of HEFI rounds. Overall, you should always take the gun loadout that has the most Hull 103s available, with the 2 Hull 103 loadout being leagues better than the 2 Type 89s. The visuals of the Ki-43-1 are relatively nice, but I've never quite liked the look of the skinny fuselage and the rounded triangle wings of the earlier Ki planes as much as the Zeros, or the B6N family, but it definitely doesn't look bad. Most amazingly about the visuals is the amount of paint jobs the Ki-43 gets, at 5 separate paint jobs, which is 9 near unheard of in the Japanese airtech tree. The default is a great Japanese green paint job with fantastic white and yellow accents. The unpainted skin is a straight silver, which looks okay. The unpainted trainer skin is the same as the last, but with an additional insignia painted on the tail and the green propeller cap. The standard unicolor skin is a nice skin with more yellow accents than the default, and the most interesting one is a non-standard bicolor camouflage, which is in fact really quite unusual for the Japanese tree, being a rusty orange and green mixed splotchy camo. This one is fairly unique, so I like it. This one and the default are my personal favorites. The cockpit of the Ki-43-1 has simply magnificent visibility. Remember, I really never play first person, so this is all a subjective view from somebody who has no idea what they're talking about. You sit very high up in the cockpit, as is usual in the Ki line. The forwards, sideways, and upwards visibilities are all phenomenal, with very little bracing to worry about. Most impressively, in my opinion, is the rearward visibility. The seat is incredibly narrow, and you can see almost directly behind you. The gun sight is one of the telescopic ones, which I've never really liked, but it is still far better than that of the Kika. The finances and modifications for the Ki-43-1 will go at the end of the video. For now, let's hop to the next variant of the Ki-43 family, the Ki-43-2. The Ki-43-2 can be found foldered under the Ki-43-1 in the tech tree, and has a lot better engine in it, though at the cost of an additional 0.2 tons of added weight, as well as some of your maneuverability and turn fighting capability. However, it does get some other interesting features which we'll talk about here. To start out, the speed of the Ki-43-2 is superior to the 1, with it easily being able to reach 400 to 450 km per hour in level flight on the deck in less time than would take the 1 to reach only 300 to 350 km per hour. Bear in mind, many opponents will still be able to outrun you or dive away from you, but this will increase the energy you have to fight them and will make it noticeably harder for them to escape a dogfight with you. Despite the better engine, I found that it climbs near identically to the 1 in practical gameplay. The important question, how does the new Nakajima Ha-115 engine and the added weight change the dogfighting performance? To put it simply, it makes it better at lower altitudes, but takes away the partial super maneuverability at low speeds at high altitudes. This might not make sense, as it has, at least statistically, worse agility and dogfighting performance, but let me explain. At low altitudes, the major issue in the 1 was that after a few turns, you start to bleed energy, which hampers maneuverability and gives the opponents a fair dogfight. The 2 decisively removes that sweet chance at a fair fight from the enemies, despite having slightly worse turn time than the 1. This is due to the increased engine, and as long as you don't have flaps out for incredibly long periods of time at lower altitudes, you'll never actually reach that speed at which you start to have worse performance, even in long protracted turn fights. This means that you never really lose that advantage in turn performance, so you may turn fight most any enemies to your heart's content without worry of excessive bleed. The increased engine power also makes it much easier to accelerate back to high speeds after a turn fight, so you can start your next one with higher energy. I will also note that you lose a little bit of fine control in things like your rudder compared to the 1, so it will be a bit harder to get your guns on target with the 2. This may be a deal breaker for some people, but I found the additional engine power to be quite important. At those higher altitudes, you will still have some issues with speed bleed and loss of turn performance. However, you don't get the crazy super maneuverability of the 1. Again, you're not bad by any stretch of the imagination, and you do still have higher low-speed performance, but it's just that your plane acts much more like an actual plane instead of whatever the Ki-43-1 was doing up there once it hits lower speeds. Do be mindful of this, and keep an eye on your energy to make sure you don't completely empty it all in a fight. The improved engine once again helps you keep up energy, but not as efficiently as at lower altitudes. So, in comparing flight performance, both Ki-43s are better at lower altitudes, but the Ki-43-1 bleeds energy down to a situation where it's less maneuverable after a few turns, while the Ki-43-2 doesn't, and also has a much easier time getting speed back, and can reach higher speeds by a noticeable margin. They both bleed energy and performance quicker at higher altitudes, but the Ki-43-1 gets some weird UFO maneuvering at low speeds that the Ki-43-2 doesn't get. The Ki-43-1 does noticeably get some better flight performance in terms of the rudder and ailerons, making it much easier to line up a shot than on the two. Generally, I actually take the Ki-43-2's flight performance probably 6 or 7 times out of 10, as you have much better energy, speed, and don't need to be as worried about micromanaging energy drain in most dogfights. However, I completely understand if you prefer the little bit better dogfighting performance and ability to get guns on target in the one. The Ki-43-2 also gets some additional bells and whistles to play around with. One of those is a self-sealing fuel tank, which just seems rather random. Despite the fact that it's kind of neat that you get one of these, as very few Japanese fighters do, it's generally useless as you get lit on fire quite easily, so the chance that you'll survive long enough after being hit for it to be of any use is quite minimal. The Ki-43-2 sports only one of the available loadouts of guns, which is the two 12.7mm Hull 103 machine guns. As discussed earlier with the Ki-43-1, these guns are quite respectable and a clear step up from the 7.7mm guns. They're not insane one-shot kill guns and typically take a few good hits to take an enemy down, but they do their job quite admirably. They similarly have a great air target spell with lots of high explosive fragmentation incendiary rounds, which will serve you well. Overall, it's quite a decent set of forward guns that you shouldn't have too many qualms using, especially after suffering through the pathetic guns of low-tier Japan. The Ki-43-2 also has the capability to bring out several sets of secondary armaments. It can carry two 50kg Army Type 94 GPHE bombs, two 100kg Army Type 94 GPHE bombs, or two 250kg Army Type 92 GPHE bombs. The 50kg bombs are nigh near impossible to get a kill with, requiring pinpoint precise drops. The 100kg bombs are similarly not amazing, also requiring high accuracy to get solid hits with on ground vehicles. The 250kg bombs are much more forgiving and can actually be quite adequate at dealing with lighter and even some medium tanks at this battle rating. However, this is a fighter, not a strike aircraft. The bombs greatly decrease maneuverability, and you also actually have some very respectable strike aircraft at this BR with the B6N family, so there's never really any need to take the bombs out with this plane. They're just kind of there as gimmicks, and you don't have any optical bomb sights, so you'll just be blind dropping them as well, making them much harder to get any good kills with. The visuals of the Ki-43-2 are very similar to that of the one. It has the same narrow fuselage and rounded triangular wings. You will notice that the wings themselves are smaller than the Ki-43-1, which helps explain the lower maneuverability. The Ki-43-2 also only gets one skin, but it's my personal favorite of the Ki-43 family. It has the standard Japanese green paint job, with deep blue, red, and white stripes. The cockpit of the Ki-43-2 is a little bit worse than the one in my opinion. The upwards visibility is not as good due to slightly more bracing being present, and the seat is larger, blocking out more of your rearward visibility. However, the general visibility is still top-notch, and you do get a holographic gun sight, which I prefer much more than the telescopic ones. Either way you prefer it, it is much, much better than the gun sight of the Kika. Alright, we have made it through the nitty-gritty of the performance and specifics of both of these wonderful planes. Let's get the boring stuff out of the way and be done with this double fighter special. Firstly, to the finances of the planes. The Ki-43-1 costs 4,000 RP to research, 2,100 SL to purchase, and 600 SL to slot, bringing us up to a total of 2,700 SL to purchase and slot. The repair cost of a fully upgraded Ki-43-1 is 225 SL in arcade battles and 494 SL in realistic battles. The Ki-43-2 only costs 3,000 RP to research, but costs 6,300 SL to purchase and 1,800 SL to slot, bringing us up to a total of 8,100 SL to purchase and slot. As you can see, the research cost is a bit lower than the one, but the overall SL cost is 3 times as high. Not cool, Snail. The repair cost of a fully upgraded Ki-43-1 is 327 SL in arcade battles and 674 SL in realistic battles. This is also higher, but not excessively so. The modifications are also fairly different for these two aircraft. For the Ki-43-1, get the upgraded guns as soon as possible. First, get the airframe to unlock rank 2 modifications, then get the Otsu mod ASAP to get at least one 12.7mm gun. Then get the airframe, engine, and 12.7mm belts. Then get the Hey mod for your second 12.7mm gun and breathe a sigh of relief. After that, get the engine injection, cover, and wings. Then get the remaining performance mods. Feel free skipping any upgrades to the 7.7mm guns. The total cost of the modifications is 4,450 RP and 2,680 SL. For the Ki-43-2, I'd recommend focusing on the performance mods and just ignore the bombs till the end. First, get the 12.7mm belts and new 12.7mm guns. Then get the airframe and wings repair. After that, get the engine, cover, and engine injection. Then get the rest of the performance mods. Feel free to get or skip the bomb modifications after if you feel like it. The total cost of the modifications is 5,960 RP and 4,520 SL. Just like that, we have made it to the end of this guide on the Ki-43-1 and 2, as well as the end of Rank 1 Japan. Congratulations! After having survived that many 7.7mm machine guns, you deserve it. These were excellent fighters to play, and both should act as a very good entrance to Rank 2. If you're keeping pace with these ones, most of Rank 2 shouldn't be much harder. I'd be honored to see you next time, where we'll be covering either just the A6M2N float plane, or that and the N1K1 float plane. I haven't quite decided if they're different enough to warrant separate, albeit shorter videos, but we'll see. I might also consider doing a Rank 1 wrap-up for the next video, but again, we'll have to see. I haven't thought that far ahead yet. Whether you're there or not, I thank you for tuning in today.